And we start with breaking news out of South Carolina, where a man ambushed a prayer group, shooting and killing at least 9 people. Police now calling the shooting at the historic Black church a hate crime. Just into our newsroom, we now know the victims are 6 women, 3 men, including the pastor of Emmanuel AME Church and a state senator, Clementa Pinckney. Police releases picture of the suspected shooter overnight from surveillance video. He is described as a white man in his early 20s. We're told he entered the church, sat down for a while, about an hour, then he opened fire. We'll have much more on this coming up in our next half hour.
Meantime, another big story of the day. Tropical depression Bill pounded the coast of Texas before racing up north to Oklahoma, and people in its path are cleaning up after flash flooding. And it's drenching a state that's still recovering from recent flooding. So far, no serious injuries have been reported, but that does not mean people are out of danger this morning. News 13's Catherine Mazzone has been following the latest. She's here with more. Good morning, Catherine.
Well, that's right, Crystal. The rains came down hard and fast. In San Antonio, it led to 14 high water rescues across town. Cameras were rolling as crews worked to save 3 young teenagers screaming for help.
That shouting is coming from these 3 teenagers. Their vehicle swept away in rushing water. You wouldn't know it, but this raging river is actually a park in San Antonio. It was there that the teens were able to get out of their vehicle and onto the roof as the water continued to rise.
When the first units got here, the water was already up to the windows.
Firefighters arrived quickly, but to make matters worse, this large tree branch came crashing down, blocking their way. They were able to get a little closer and extend the ladder of their truck, but that still wasn't enough.
We send another team downstream, and they have large rope bags that can be deployed across in case it did lose. Went downstream, we could catch them.
By now, the teens could no longer be seen on the roof of their car. Instead, they were all holding onto trees, clinging as tightly as possible while rescuers rushed to get to them. Finally, the tense moments came to an end as firefighters were able to get a rescue boat to the teens. All 3 were glad to be back on land. Firefighters say it's another harsh reminder of how strong the rushing waters can be.
They attempted to go across a creek with the vehicle, and it doesn't take much but a few inches of water to take a vehicle in.
Well, before the rainy season in May, Texas was in a historic 5-year drought. Climatologists say the dams and reservoirs left empty by the drought kept the recent heavy rains from doing even more damage. Back to you.
At least there's some good news there. Thanks so much, Catherine. So Texas is in an El Nino year, which means they're seeing more than normal rain. The state could face a threat of flooding all year long.
New details this morning. Bernalillo County's district and metro courts are working to keep high-risk criminals off the streets. According to the Albuquerque Journal, the courts will be running a trial program beginning July 1st. They will rank defendants into 4 categories, just how likely they are to commit more crimes or even show up to court again. Most judges already do their own version of this, but if the trial is successful, all judges will use the same process.
This morning, the death of a woman has her neighbors looking for answers. It happened last week in Veguita, that's south of Belen. State police say they went to check on 34-year-old Veronica Romero and found her dead inside her home. Police have not released too many details on this, but at least a dozen people in the town told us that she was attacked.
I figure, you know, if they have enough gall to do that, then they're probably able to do other things. And who knows what might happen if they don't catch them.
So Romero's death comes about a week after a woman was beaten and raped inside her home in Los Chavez. That's just north of Belen. Police are still looking for her attacker this morning.
Tense moments on I-40 after a man threatened to jump from the Wyoming Boulevard Bridge. This whole thing caused a major traffic backup on the interstate. Both east and westbound lanes were shut down for more than 3 hours. It all started at 12:30 yesterday when police say they got a call about a man who was threatening to jump. APD closed the road. Police and firefighters talked that man down eventually. On to this, developing right now. A Santa Fe police officer will stand trial for time card fraud. The judge made the ruling yesterday when witnesses revealed GPS tracking data from a device secretly installed on his patrol car. It showed this man leaving early 19 Wagner, in fact, leaving early at 19 out of 24 workdays during a 2-month period. And his lawyers tell the Santa Fe New Mexican he was simply flexing his time, an informal but long-standing practice within the department. Wagner has been put on leave without pay.
We move on to this. A man whose mission is to help others in New Mexico is now asking for your help after someone stole his prized possession while making a stop here in the Duke City. Quincy Brown and a group of volunteers from Alabama flew into Albuquerque Sunday. They were eating breakfast at the IHOP near the Sunport when their cars were broken into. His son is hoping the guitar will be returned just in time for Father's Day.
And for him to lose that, I mean, it touched me to see him so upset, because he never gets upset over anything.
So IHOP says it could not retrieve surveillance video from that day.
Now turning to a look over our nation's capital this morning, where just yesterday the Treasury Department made an historical announcement. There it is. The department says the new redesigned $10 bill will feature a woman. Just last month, there was an online campaign for that push on the $20 bill. Folks were asking, most popular anyway, was Harriet Tubman. The bill, the new one, will be unveiled in 2020, just in time for the centennial of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. And we've got a post online right now, KRQE News 13 on Facebook. You can weigh in and tell us what you'd like to see on the $10 bill. Whose face? 6:07 and new this morning, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has already hit the campaign trail, making a stop in the southern states.
And while in South Carolina yesterday, the former Secretary of State made a call to Judy Scott. She is the mother of Walter Scott, the unarmed black man killed by police earlier this year. She also brought up the event during a speech she was giving, calling the death of Walter Scott a tragedy. Clinton called for improvements in officer recruitment, training, and community policing.
Meantime, developing right now in California, investigators are now looking at the balcony that collapsed there, killing 6 people and injuring several others. According to an early report, the wood that held the balcony up was rotting. And now the city says the balcony below that one that gave way is also at risk of collapsing. Yesterday, engineers on elevated platforms worked to remove the balcony, found unsafe. At least 2 others have been red tagged as well.
And take a look at this video. Flooding in China has gotten so bad it's taking down houses, turning deadly. At least 5 people have died. More than 58,000 residents cannot return home. The family in that house right there, luckily, they weren't inside when it was swept away by rushing waters. And get this, the area is expecting more rain in the next 3 days, hitting mostly the southern part of that country. But it's a lot to deal with in such a short amount of time.
And the house just disappeared into that water, too. That's frightening how much water's there. We'll see you then. Meantime, developing now, police in Charleston, South Carolina are hunting for a man who opened fire on a prayer group at an historic black church. At least 9 people were shot and killed. Yeah, and people actually gathered to pray near the church overnight as authorities began their search for the killer. Catherine Mazzone is in the Newsplex with the latest on this. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. This is what the scene looked like outside of Emanuel AME moments after the shooting. Now, this just into our newsroom. Reports from the Charleston affiliate indicate the shooter may have left some survivors to tell the story. There are 3. Police have not released the victims' identities, but say 3 males and 6 females are dead. Police say the suspect sat with the prayer group at the church for about an hour before opening fire.
It is unfathomable that somebody in today's society would walk into a church when people are having a prayer meeting and take their lives.
This in from our Charleston affiliate as well. A photo of the suspect. He's described as a slender, clean-shaven, white 21-year-old man with sandy blonde hair, wearing a gray sweatshirt and jeans. The church is led by Reverend Clementa Pinckney, a Democratic member of the South Carolina Senate. Another state politician has confirmed he was killed. The police chief says officers on the hunt for the suspect are tired but energized because they take this personally. Emanuel AME is one of the oldest black churches in the nation. That's why investigators are treating this as a hate crime and why the FBI will be part of this investigation. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Catherine. The state's governor, Nikki Haley, asked everyone to lift up the victims and their families with love and prayer. Our thoughts go out to them this morning. And in the overnight hours, Republican presidential candidate Jeb Bush has canceled all events planned for today in Charleston. A spokeswoman said Governor Bush's thoughts and prayers are with all of those affected by this tragedy.
Heartbreak for an LA couple who stopped in Albuquerque. Some very valuable things were stolen from their RV. Jessica Jones and her husband were in Old Town on Tuesday on their way back to California. While they ate lunch, their RV was broken into. Thieves, they say, stole cameras, a computer, her purse, and her husband's backpack.
And all of pictures for the last 8 years of my niece when she was a baby, my dog that just passed away. all of our trips, our wedding pictures, everything's on there.
A couple says they do plan to check local pawn shops to try to get their stuff back.
A section of Central that the city has wanted for years to repave will just have to wait a little bit longer. You might have noticed the big bumps along West Central Avenue near Rio Grande and Lomas. Back in November, the city held public meetings and came up with a plan to revamp that road. But now that plan is on hold because of the city's proposed bus rapid transit system. The city is about halfway through coming up with another new design for the intersection. And while they wait for federal funding for BRT, it will likely be another year or two before that intersection gets any attention.
You can tell in the road that it's really bumpy.
I really wish they could get on it as soon as possible.
Now's the time to rebuild them, and hopefully we'll get on it soon.
Yet the city says it hopes to have a final design to revamp West Central by the end of the year.
We've been working here at News 13 to get you answers about why a career criminal was not locked up when he shot and killed Rio Rancho, or is accused of shooting Rio Rancho officer Greg Benner. We finally got an answer from the judges. Romero could have gotten up to 13 years in prison for having drugs, a gun, and a stolen car. Instead, he was put on probation and ordered to drug rehab. During a discussion with Bernalillo County court judges, News 13 asked a second judicial district judge about commenting on cases and rulings. Judge Nash tells us it's simply not allowed.
You do not want judges defending their rulings. You don't want judges responding simply to public opinion. Why? Because we are supposed to be impartial.
And that was just a portion of Judge Nash's comments. We have the full response right now, if you'd like to see it, on the KRQE News app.
And the widow of Officer Benner will help review the state criminal justice system. Hector Valderas, the Attorney General, says Julie Benner will join the violent crimes case review team. Her husband, again, was fatally shot last month during a traffic stop. The suspect there, Andrew Romero, is a repeat offender. Valderas says the team will determine where the system is failing so criminals like Romero don't slip through the cracks. Julie Benner will lead the Community Heroes Division, working with cases similar to hers.
Former Lobo basketball player Hugh Greenwood's stolen car has been found. It was taken last week on his last day in Albuquerque outside his girlfriend's house. According to an online post by his parents, the interior of the car was stripped, but the car was intact. They say that insurance will cover their losses.
We turn now to this. Governor Susana Martinez has signed the $294 million spending measure that pays for key projects across the state. This morning, cities across the state are getting ready for that money. It will pay for roads, school improvements, and water projects. Lawmakers passed the bill in a special session last week. They also agreed to restore state tax deduction for medical expenses. There's also a tax incentive package designed to spur job growth. And a boom in babies. The number of births is going up in the U.S., especially in the Hispanic community. That's according to the CDC. In 2014, every group saw a rise in birth rates except for Native Americans. Hispanics, we make up about 17% of the population, but made up nearly 23% of births just last year.
6:37, and former NBA basketball player Kenny Thomas is expected to be in Albuquerque this morning, serving up a charity breakfast. He'll be at the Meals on Wheels headquarters today for its annual breakfast extravaganza event. That event benefits the low-income food and enrichment program, also known as LIFE. The program provides free meals to sick, homebound, and low-income people. The event earned $15,000 last year.
Police in Atlanta, Georgia are looking for two people who crashed into a group of children, then took off. Police say it all started with a street race. You can see the two cars in this surveillance video. One of them, a Camaro, loses control, crosses the street, then slams right into the group of kids there. They're sitting on a church bench. That's when you see the driver and a passenger. They jump out of the car, run to a second vehicle, then speed off. Police say all of the children were taken to the hospital. They're back at home this morning. They're okay. Atlanta police are reviewing the video, hoping to make an arrest in this case. And it has to be very terrifying for the, family members, the parents of those children to see the video like that.
I know, and all over something that may have been able to be prevented in the first place. It's frightening.